It was big, too big to be a person. It stood at least 9 foot tall. I mean, it was massive.
Imagine the terror of a Bigfoot with wings.
He saw his father being jerked to his feet and lifted into the air.
And I tell you, that was the spookiest thing I ever saw in my life.
The whole event, everything about it was a life-changing moment. I shot Bigfoot.
You could have that one definitive piece of evidence that could help get the species verified.
Flesh and blood remains of what appears to be a Bigfoot.
One of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing, that's happened in the Sasquatch world to date.
Along much of the eastern U.S. are the dark inland forests of Appalachia. On its western edge within Breckinridge County, Kentucky, the hills are thick with rumors about a bizarre mutant beast, a crossover between mutton and man, a giant sheep that's gone savage.
Yes, this Appalachian part of the country has been seen a lot. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it. It was huge. It was huge.
They've got woolly hair. It's usually white or dirty white, huge jaws and fangs, and a tail that usually has no fur on it.
We had to go down to the pump house by the river, and we'd find dead dogs, wolves, all kinds of fish that'd been ate on, and the bones left.
We had always heard noises that we just could never explain, like a growl almost, but you could hear them for long distances.
The woods are mysterious. People still won't go out really at night into the woods. It's one of the few things that people around here won't really talk about, but there's definitely something out there that keeps them all inside.
That something is a creature that's known to locals as sheep squatch. The legend may have started long ago. Sheep herders immigrating to Appalachia from Britain, bringing stories of demons wearing sheep hides and horns. But to this very day, the belief remains in force.
Sheep squatch is predominantly in the woods. I feel like that it has been very good at eluding. It's had to be. It does know that we're looking. And I think it just wants to be left alone.
Some claim to have caught a glimpse. And recently, two adventurous Breckinridge boys, Ricky Joyce and Dakota Cheeks, had a showdown with a sheep squatch. They'll never forget it.
Well, when I tell most people I've seen it, they just tell me I'm crazy, I'm a crackpot. But there are a few people that believe in it. Mainly the people that live around here are the ones that don't call me crazy.
At 13, Dakota met Ricky Joyce in school. The pair have been close ever since.
There's always been a form of trust between me and Ricky, especially the older we get. You know, he's right there with you to the very end.
We're more brothers than we are friends. He's trustworthy, he's loyal. I've never had a friend have my back like him.
That bond would be tested on a warm summer weekend in July of 2004. On a hunting trip, Dakota and Ricky ventured into some of Kentucky's more remote tracts of wilderness.
All I really need is this.
Base camp for the deer hunt. Ricky's grandparents' cabin at the foot of 100 acres of dense timber. But the first morning, something's wrong with one of Ricky's dogs.
And we called her for her and she just didn't come. When we noticed that the dog was laying in the ditch, we walked over and that's when we found her.
It appeared that something had twisted its head almost completely around. It was quite a sight. It just seemed kind of strange, though, that something just handled it like it did.
There's no animal up here that can grab an animal by its chin and the back of its head and twist it. You know, no coyote can do it. There's no bear, as far as I know, up here. It became very apparent that we had to find out, you know, what happened, what got her, and why.
Are there creatures capable of such violence roaming the backwoods of Appalachia?
Before the dog incident, for months we'd been hearing noises coming from the top of the hill. There were growls and screams, things that we just didn't know anything about. We went looking to see if we could figure out what had happened, see if we could find tracks, anything big, anything that could have killed a 150-pound dog like it did.
we decided we were going to hop on the four-wheelers and stake out the hilltop.
We ended up going the far side of the property.
Dude, I'm telling you, put them right over here.
Where nobody really goes. There's no trails.
We'll make a couple laps around the field. That way we can both easily see where the four-wheeler has been, so we know where to look.
I was concerned because I didn't know what they were dealing with, if there was potentially harm for them out there.
They searched the area for hours, but no clues turned up. Exhausted, they retreated to the family's hunting camper set within the hillside.
We ended up staying in the camper, and we started hearing all sorts of weird noises, things walking around.
We knew a creature was close. About 5 a.m. in the morning, the dogs start barking, and they take off running down the hill. Well, me and Ricky sit there and a little hesitant to go outside because, you know, the other dogs are now gone.
The camper that seemed a safe haven was suddenly under attack.
Something actually ran into the trailer. Kind of scared the crap out of me.
It literally sounded like all hell was breaking loose. It's almost like you can hear something pressing up against the side, and you can kind of hear the tin start to bend. It's just that weird, eerie metal sound. And then it was just free fall. It was like it let go, and then we hit. I was terrified. I mean, there shouldn't be anything out here strong enough to push a camper like that.
What the hell's going on?
When it actually moved and tipped, I wasn't sure what it was.
But we knew without a shadow of a doubt that there was something there.
They had started a day as hunters. Now Dakota and Ricky were feeling they were the ones being tracked.
Neither one of us were sure if we were going to make it out alive.
In July of 2004, Dakota Cheeks and Ricky Joyce were on a hunting trip in the woods of Kentucky. But it took a horrible turn. One of Ricky's dogs was mysteriously mangled. Then, their camper came under attack. Everything pointed to Appalachia's bizarre hybrid beast, sheep squatch. At Ricky's grandparents' cabin, they gather more ammunition.
I know there's something out there.
I think he'll that dog, man.
I know it's a beast.
Whatever it was, it had to be huge.
We were determined to find something having that much strength. It made me want to find it more, but I knew that, you know, we couldn't just go up there in a four-wheeler and expect everything to be okay.
I had some beast that lived on my property that killed my dog already. I didn't know what to do about it. I was scared that it was going to come to my house.
With guns loaded, Ricky and Dakota head back into the woods. They crossed through a cemetery and entered an open field.
Your mind is telling you, 1,000 times, don't let him go. But ultimately, you begin to share his passion of, get it. Just be really careful, but get it.
I seen something standing in the field, and at first I thought it was a tree. It was tall, but it was also kind of hunched over a little bit. It was big, it was white.
And its arms were long, but they were kind of out like this, and it had these long talons. It was too big to be a person. When it was on two legs, it stood at least 9 foot tall. I mean, it was massive. When it noticed us, it let out this just ungodly, gut-curling growl. It came straight at us.
And we were shooting. I don't know that we hit anything, but I remember coming back to the house as fast as we could.
We saw sheep squatch. That's what we saw.
And this wasn't the first sheep squatch encounter.
Anybody in the Appalachia region could experience these type things. They may be out hunting deer or something of that nature and stumble upon a creature that they never suspected.
I was on my way home, coming down Ashby Lane, and there was this big hairy thing standing on the road. And as I got closer, I could see an eye. I thought it was a deer, but it was too big. Some kind of sheep thing with horns.
From their description, it's clear Dakota and Ricky had stumbled into monster country.
I've been in some pretty scary situations, but most situations you know what you're dealing with, and that one I didn't. So I didn't know how to react. That's quite possibly the scariest moment of my life.
It'd have been completely different if it had just turned around and ran away. But it didn't.
It had been a night unlike any other, but it couldn't end there. They had to get a look at the scene one more time.
We decided we were going to come back when it was daylight and investigate more. So we came back to the same spot and could not find no blood or nothing where he'd hit anything.
One thing that kind of really struck us as odd is you could see drag marks going off into the woods.
Look at that, man.
Almost as if something had come back and either drug it to safety or drug it off to eat it, or maybe it even drug itself off. I wish we could have found its body that night. Before our time is up, it's done. If we have it our way, we're actually going to drag sheep squatch out of these woods.
In Texas, the Rio Grande Valley. A vast, fertile floodplain running along the northern bank of the Rio Grande River. This remote, largely unclaimed land is well known for attracting a huge variety of migrating birds. And within this same valley, there is a legend about a winged creature of monstrous proportions. A bizarre and terrifying amalgamation of bat and Bigfoot.
The buzz all started in the first couple months of 1976. Things came to a head when a man in Raymondville, out in his front yard, was attacked by a creature that he claimed had simian and bat-like features and leathery wings.
As the story goes, on January 14th, 1976, Armando Grimaldo stepped outside to enjoy the quiet evening. He heard a papery flapping noise above him and felt a strange draft. By the time he looked up, it was too late. Grabbed by the monster, Grimaldo finally managed to break free. He reported the attack to the police.
And his story was corroborated by his neighbors because the back of his jacket and his shirt had been shredded by what appeared to be talons. After that attack, the story went wild. All of the newspapers were reporting it. Other reports began to pour in. People were making their children stay indoors. They were afraid that the creature might attack them. There was a general panic throughout the entire Rio Grande Valley at that point.
A month after the sightings began, brothers John and David Dott witnessed a flying monster attack firsthand.
Appeared to be probably 8 to 10 feet tall.
Holy crap.
And all I saw was big glowing red eyes. This wasn't anything like I'd ever seen.
And it took 3 or 4 steps towards the car.
Back up, get us out of here!
I was bracing for impact. I thought this was it.
Get us out of here! Get us out of here! Get us!
January 1976, the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. Like wildfire in a wheat field, fear was spreading. A bizarre flying monster was raining down terror from above.
The idea of winged attackers is especially frightening in a place like the Rio Grande Valley. Such an open place with no caves or forests to hide in. The idea that you might be attacked at any moment, that those talons could reach down and yank you off the ground, was enough to make people want to stay inside and give up their daily routines.
In a few short weeks, more than 10 different witnesses in South Texas reported the winged creature. In February of 1976, it was about to make 2 more believers. Almost 4 decades after an incident on an outlying road north of Houston, brothers David and John Dott have come forward to share their experience.
It was February 1976. I was 23 and my brother was 21.
Hey, come on.
My brother David was driving. It was a nice little car. We were on our way to work on the night shift at a local manufacturing company.
Bye, hon. Hey, come on, we're late.
Come on, man, we're always late.
We took the usual route that we always take. And we went about a mile or so down the road where it was just pastures on both sides of the road. We were listening, of course, to rock and roll music, as we always did.
Man, what is this junk you're always listening to? When are you going to get some decent music in here?
All of a sudden, he said, "Look up ahead." There was something standing in the middle of the road.
Hey, he ain't going to move. You need to slow down.
It was right in front of us. There was nothing but that creature in the headlights. You could absolutely see it. And it had really intense red eyes.
The wings were more like bat wings, not feathers, but more like a bat look to it.
And it took 3 or 4 steps towards the car.
Back up, back up.
I just freaked.
And then it just flew right over the top of the car.
And as we looked up through the windshield, all I can remember is these huge red glowing eyes staring down at us as it flew over the car. It was a horrible, loud, flapping noise.
What was that? I don't know.
There it goes.
Oh, what the hell is it?
We looked at each other and said, "Nobody's going to believe us."
John, let's get out of here.
And all I was about is getting out of there.
Back in 1976, we were pretty young, full of piss and vinegar, as they say, and so when you see this huge creature flying at you...
John, let's get out of here.
Let me tell you what, that changed our attitude. We weren't so full of ourselves after this.
With so many sporadic sightings, it's led many residents to wonder if such creatures could really exist.
There were enormous birds that lived in the Ice Age up until about 10,000 years ago, and these were known as teratorns. One North American species had a wingspan of about 18 feet across. There's a very strong possibility that some of these animals may have lived on beyond their presumed extinction dates, and perhaps they live in very remote areas of our continent, and that's why they're only seen very rarely.
We've got many large winged creatures out here. We've got sightings of a very large raven-like creature with a 30-foot wingspan. We've got sightings of a pterodactyl. I think we have pockets of breeding populations still left around the world of prehistoric-type animals.
I mean, scientists discover new species every day. In the dense rainforests, out in the vast deserts, and in a region like the Rio Grande Valley, with such open, expansive areas, is it really hard to imagine that a species has escaped detection for hundreds of years? I don't think so.
Hundreds of miles southwest from the Dott brothers' encounter, a flying monster's attack that same year in Hidalgo County would transform a young boy into a hero. In the 1970s, witnesses claim a bizarre flying Frankenbeast, Batsquatch, unleashed terrifying airstrikes from the skies of South Texas.
You had a couple of cops who, when doing their rounds late at night, both independently spotted a leathery winged creature flying overhead. A man who was fishing in Brownsville saw a creature that he claimed looked like an enormous bat.
Batsquatch is a very strange-looking creature. It's described as standing about 9 feet tall, very muscular, with a head like a dog or a wolf, blue-tinted fur, yellow crescent-shaped eyes, and of course, giant, leathery, bat-like wings.
David Bowles grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. He has collected monster stories throughout the region.
One of the most nail-biting encounters was the one that Manuel Perales and his 12-year-old son Danny had in the month of January of that year.
Let's go.
When father and son pulled their rifles out, their cooler full of sandwiches, and climbed up into the deer stand and began the long wait. After a few hours, a deer did arrive. Just the sort that his father wanted to bag that day. Manuel nudged his son, indicating that he should go ahead and take the shot. But as Danny sighted and looked into the eyes of the deer, he realized he couldn't do it. He turned to his father and simply shook his head. His father was clearly upset and took aim to take the shot himself. However, his rifle jammed, and at that very moment, the deer bolted. His father turned to Danny and asked him, "Why couldn't you take the shot?" Danny, before he could reply, was startled to see his father suddenly pull to his feet. He saw his father gripped by the talons of an enormous avian humanoid that flapped its wings and tried to lift the man out of the deer stand. Danny, without thinking, stood, lifted his rifle to his shoulder, aimed for the beast's eye, took the shot. It howled in pain, released his father, fell with a thud, and then it wheeled away through the sky, screeching in pain.
Dad, you all right?
Manuel Perales realized that he was lucky to make it out alive. He suffered only cracked ribs, which healed with time. Manuel never forgot the actions of his son, the way the boy had saved his life.
After 2 frightening months in South Texas, the flying fiend abruptly disappeared. Though for anyone that crossed its path, the memory of the encounter burns bright.
That 15 or 20 seconds that we saw that creature is ingrained forever in my memories. Today, if I close my eyes, I can see that thing. I do remember those eyes, and that will take me to my grave, those glowing red eyes.
The Pacific Northwest, one of the last places in the continental U.S. to be explored. It's a region drenched in rain, more than anywhere else in America, producing some of the densest forests. A good place for something to hide. Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti, interchangeable terms for the giant hairy humanoid said to stalk these woods. Stories of the giant ones may have begun among Native Americans. Native American legends eventually made their way into popular awareness. Then, in 1958, at a construction site in Bluff Creek, California, bulldozer operator Jerry Crew found an enormous footprint. After that, the elusive trackmaker was a media sensation. Despite years of cheap stunts and gorilla suits, the public's interest has only grown. And then there are some who never gave Bigfoot a thought until they came face to face.
The whole event, everything about it was a life-changing moment. There was this moment where I was just like, I shot Bigfoot.
On the southern edge of the Pacific Northwest, near the Sierra Mountains in Northern California, 27-year-old Justin Smeha lives with his wife and daughter.
About the only thing I do in my free time is hunting and fishing. Since I was raised, that's all we ever did. Every weekend, it's assumed that we're going hunting or fishing year-round. When it came to Bigfoot or Sasquatch growing up, I just never heard anybody talk about it like it's a real thing. I really knew nothing about it.
On October 8th, 2010, all that changed.
Me and a buddy were out bear hunting. There was about an hour and a half left of sunlight. We came into the clearing where the meadow is, and both of us kind of looked over. We saw movement.
Stop, stop, stop.
And I saw this creature standing there about 80 yards away. It was 600 pounds and like 7.5, maybe 8 feet tall. This is a monster. This is something that shouldn't be here. This is a nightmare. This is different. This is unreal. Yeah, at that point I was looking at it and I was thinking, this is not supposed to be here. This thing needs to die. So I jerked the trigger a little bit and shot. The animal went down. I got it. It started trying to get up, so I rechambered it. It was staggering away, sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes on all 4. It was just getting out of eyesight. I take my eye out of the scope and I look over and there's 2 smaller ones. They were of a cinnamon color, they were brown, and they were on two legs, and they would drop down all fours, and I was still kind of in nightmare mode. Oh my God, there's more! And I was thinking, this is crazy. Then they became even more frightening. And then we're thinking, well, are they going to come and bite us? Are they going to come and attack us? Should we be afraid right now? Let's go!
Justin and his buddy jumped out of the car, hoping to find the creatures.
We started running, all of a sudden we stopped and we could see the little ones right in front of us. They had a lot of human features, but they looked just sort of like a monkey would look. It sounded like deaf chatter if you've ever heard a deaf person try to speak. And then they split up.
For the next 15 minutes, Justin and his buddy ran through the woods, searching. Suddenly, Justin found himself alone, staring at one of the juveniles.
I could not make sense of it. I was sitting there looking at this thing thinking, how can this be real? Adrenaline, my heart was pumping a million miles an hour. I decided that I was going to shoot one because if I didn't shoot this thing, nobody would ever believe that this happened. I put the scope on it. I shot it right in the middle of the neck. I picked up the little one. It was starting to choke to death. It was just in the last moments of its life. When I got close to it, it seemed to have a lot of really human features. The hair was really thin, and it had white in its eyes, and it was just sitting there looking at me. And I was sitting there holding it, looking at it, and I was like, I messed up. I messed up. It probably only took maybe 10 seconds for it to choke to death. Right about that time, then my buddy comes up the hill, and he was kind of thinking the same thing I was, that this was just too human. This was, what we did was wrong. I felt so ashamed.
Fearing the game warden was heading their way, they panicked and decided to bury the creature.
I went to the thickest brush I could find and started just put it in and started grabbing stuff, throwing it on top of it, whatever we could find, stumps, trees, brush, rocks. On the 2.5-hour drive home, never said a word to each other. It was really just nothing but shame. It was just, I knew that I had messed up. I felt an extreme amount of guilt. They didn't mean us any harm. At one point, it just hit me that I realized that I had shot not one, but 2 Bigfoots, and it was life-changing.
Word would get out about the shootings, and Justin was soon contacted by Derek Randalls, one of the most prominent Sasquatch hunters in the Pacific Northwest.
When we spoke, I said, there's a body of researchers that have been doing this for decades, and you could have that one definitive piece of evidence out there that could help, get the species verified.
So Derek's just trying to say, hey, you need to go back there, you need to get the body. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And he's like, no, you don't understand. This is the biggest archaeological discovery ever. And you're sitting there saying that you're gonna let a body rot in the woods. It was just this idea of going back to relive this nightmare and relive the shame of killing something that seemed awfully human.
I was really getting the feeling like Justin was on the level. If you're gonna make up a hoax, would you go through all the different parts of this story that are so graphic and so heartbreaking and so unnecessary? I wouldn't.
Many years ago, Derek had his own harrowing encounter with Bigfoot and barely escaped with his life.
I never really understood fear to that level until I laid eyes on a Sasquatch.
In the Pacific Northwest, construction worker Justin Smeha was hunting when he claims he came across and killed a Sasquatch 700 miles north in Washington's Olympic Mountains. Derek Randalls has spent years hunting this very creature.
Well, look here. Why don't we go off this perch here, right over here?
Placing camera traps throughout the woods, Derek is hoping to finally prove the monster is real. It's a passion that began 3 decades ago.
When I was young, probably by about age 15, I got into off-trail hiking and mountaineering. This is my element. It's where I feel like home. I'm actually safer in the woods than I am in the city.
Safer. Until one afternoon in August 1985, when he and a friend were hiking in the mountains.
I never really understood fear to that level until I laid eyes on a Sasquatch. We left the trailhead probably, I'm going to say, around 2 o'clock. We ended up going probably about 1.5 miles past Camp Pleasant.
As sunlight began to fade, they hiked off trail another half mile and set up camp on a mossy finger ridge.
And then all of a sudden we hear this crash. And we just kind of stopped. And the only thing that I could think of at the time was maybe we spooked an elk because the crash was pretty big. It sounded heavy. As we're peering to the left, all of a sudden here comes a rock. And it lands about 10 feet to the left of us. It was deliberately thrown. And at that point, time just kind of freezes. As we're processing that, another rock flies and lands, almost hits the other one, very accurately thrown, lands about 10, 12 feet to the left of us again. And then it's just like it got real at that moment. There was an overwhelming feeling of being in trouble, being in danger. Something felt very wrong. It was a very dreadful feeling.
Get out of here, man.
With no idea what they were up against, escape into the woods seemed the only option.
Now we're in full-blown panic at this point. I'm running down this mountain. I don't know if you've ever been in a dream and something's chasing you and you're having a difficult time moving. It was almost like everything was in slow motion. And I could not get fast enough down that hill. I'm headed down the ridge at this point, and I remembered that I had a .357 in my backpack.
Pull up, man.
I stopped, pulled out my gun, and just very quickly looked back. I saw Bigfoot. And when I laid my eyes on this thing, everything froze. And I knew exactly what was throwing the rocks at us at that point. It was very large. The light was faded to a point where I couldn't make out facial features, but I was absolutely terrified. I can tell you without a doubt that was one of the scariest moments of my life.
Looking back on the attack, Derek now believes the Sasquatch wasn't trying to harm him.
The only thing I can figure out is that we were off trail, and I think there's a very good possibility that we got too close to a family group or a small group of them, and it was trying to intimidate us to make us leave. It was obviously not trying to hurt us, because any one of those rocks could have taken us out.
Almost 3 decades later, that encounter still burns bright. It set Derek on a quest to prove to the world that Sasquatch is real.
Once you break that line between myth and reality, and it becomes real, I don't know if it's an obsession. I can't put it down. I've never been able to put it down. I just need to know more. It's not a question of whether they're real or not. Now it's just I want to learn everything I can about them. The goal of the Olympic project was to obtain crystal clear photographs of Sasquatch in the natural environment. Yeah, this camera's going to blend in beautifully. It won't be noticed at all.
We have over 50 cameras set up. They're set up in locations like the National Forest and mountains, wildlife trails, places that people have had sightings.
Yeah, there's probably enough distance, huh?
Their cameras have captured thousands of images, mostly familiar wildlife. But on a few, tantalizing glimpses of something unusual.
This thing shows up in the camera frame at 4 in the morning, and we see a profile of what looks like just the side of something's arm. And then the next frame up in the corner, you can see 2 fingers that would in the top corner and even the part of the fingernail. We got pretty excited. And there was another picture of, we believe it to be a face. It's kind of blurry.
When all you have are blurry photos, everything changes with the news that a hunter in the Sierra Mountains may have shot a Bigfoot. If it was true, perhaps there were flesh and blood remains. Derek Randalls quickly contacted Justin Smeha. It was paramount for Justin to see the shooting in a new light and try to recover the body. A month later, when Justin finally returned, the kill site was covered in snow.
So we were digging in the snow, we found some hair, and we started digging around it. I thought it was going to be the whole body, but it turned out to just be a piece of hide that had fat on it and that had a lot of hair on it, and it was probably about this big. We drove it straight home and put it in the freezer. Derek Randalls is saying, hey, I got this DNA lab that I want you to send it to.
Hair follicles, flesh, fat. Within this handful of once living tissue, can we find the missing link? The DNA blueprint for creating a monster, and the source for all those rumors of a man-like creature stalking the woods.
It's probably one of the biggest things, if not the biggest things, in my opinion, that's happened in the Sasquatch world, in the Bigfoot research community to date.
Bigfoot hunters Derek Randalls and Justin Smeha recently submitted samples of an unidentified creature to a DNA lab. In November 2012, preliminary findings were announced, alleging that Bigfoot is a genetic relative of humans. The researchers claim that some 15,000 years ago, a hybrid species developed from males of an unknown primate, crossing with archaic human females. The result was the line of hairy humanoids we call Bigfoot. Derek and Justin will have to wait for the study to be proved conclusively. In the meantime, they know their efforts have helped to finally put Bigfoot under the microscope.
Little did I know 27 years ago when I started that I would be right here on the cutting edge of some of the most monumental, groundbreaking news that's ever come down the pike.
It's an amazing feeling to contribute a centerpiece in a DNA study that could have a major impact on the way that we see the outdoors. Now when I go into the woods, there won't be a day that I won't think about this. I will wonder if behind every tree there's a Bigfoot standing there.